What if the four horsemen were never meant to represent the future, but the pattern of every age, including ours? And what if most people have completely misunderstood what each horse truly represents? Tonight, we decode the four horsemen the way Revelation actually presents them, not through fear, but through prophecy. Before we begin, let me clarify something important. This is not speculation. This is not pop culture interpretation drawn from movies or apocalyptic fiction. This is rooted directly in Revelation chapter 6, examined carefully, with attention to what the symbols actually mean in their scriptural context. Because here's the truth. Revelation doesn't hide meaning. It reveals it to those willing to look closely. So let's talk about why the four horsemen matter, and why understanding them changes everything about how we read the end times. Here's something most people don't realize about Revelation. It's written in symbols for a reason, not to confuse us, not to obscure the truth, but to communicate realities that transcend time and culture. Think about it. If John had written, "A specific leader from a specific nation will do a specific thing in a specific year," the message would have been relevant for one generation only. But symbols? Symbols repeat. Symbols apply across centuries. Symbols reveal patterns. And that's what the four horsemen are. Not a one-time event, not a singular moment in history, but a pattern that repeats throughout the ages, intensifying as we approach the end. When you read Revelation with a surface-level understanding, the horsemen seem terrifying. Conquest, war, famine, death, chaos unleashed upon the world. But when you understand the structure, the order, the meaning behind each horse, something shifts. Once you understand this, the horsemen stop being terrifying and start being precise. So let's start with the most debated, most misunderstood horseman of all, the white horse. John writes, "And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer." Now here's where the debate begins. Some say this is Christ. After all, later in Revelation, Jesus appears on a white horse. White symbolizes purity, victory, righteousness. So it must be Jesus, right? But others argue differently. And here's why their argument carries weight. This rider appears at the opening of the first seal, a seal of judgment, not redemption. The rider carries a bow, not a sword. A crown is given to him, but not the crown of the King of Kings. He goes out conquering, but the Greek word used here implies conquest through deception, not righteous victory. So, who is this rider? What does the white horse represent? Here's the key. This is a counterfeit. This is conquest that masquerades as peace. This is a leader, a movement, a system that appears righteous, that promises salvation, that wears the appearance of victory, but is actually the beginning of judgment. The white horse represents false peace, the kind of peace the world celebrates, treaties that don't last, promises that sound beautiful but lead to bondage, leaders who rise with charisma and charm, offering solutions, but whose true nature is revealed only after they've gained power. And here's what makes this so chilling. The white horse always rides first, because deception precedes destruction. If you're drawn to decoding Revelation without fear or hype, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every video here builds on the last. Now let's talk about the other three horses, because once you understand the white horse, the rest start to make sense. The second seal is opened, and a red horse appears. John writes, "And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. Most people read this and think, war, and they're not wrong, but it's deeper than that. The red horse doesn't just represent physical war, it represents the removal of peace. It represents conflict at every level. Nation against nation, yes, but also neighbor against neighbor, brother against brother, division, hatred, violence that spreads not just on battlefields, but in homes, streets, and hearts. The red horse is what happens when the false peace of the white horse collapses. The promises were lies, the treaties were broken, and now rage erupts. Then the third seal is opened, a black horse. John writes, "And behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures, saying, 1 quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and wine." This is economic collapse, but not total destruction. Notice the specificity. Wheat and barley, the food of the common people, become impossibly expensive. A denarius was a day's wage. Imagine working an entire day just to buy enough food for one meal. That's the black horse. But the oil and wine, those are luxuries. They remain untouched. The wealthy are protected. The powerful continue to feast while the masses starve. This isn't just famine. This is inequality, control, a system where scarcity is weaponized, where the many suffer while the few prosper. The black horse represents imbalance so severe that it breaks the social order. And then the fourth seal, the pale horse. John writes, "And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over a fourth of the earth, to kill with sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, and by wild beasts of the earth." Pale. The Greek word is chloros, greenish, sickly, the color of a corpse. This is not a quick death. This is decay, pestilence, disease, the breakdown of everything that sustains life. And notice, death rides and Hades follows. Death takes the body. Hades claims the soul. This is judgment in its fullness. But here's the crucial detail. These horses don't arrive randomly. They ride in order. First, deception, then conflict, then collapse, then death, cause, effect, outcome. And this pattern doesn't just describe the end times. It describes every empire that has ever fallen, every kingdom that has ever collapsed, every civilization that has ever crumbled. The horsemen are not a one-time event. They are the cycle of judgment that repeats whenever humanity rejects God, exalts itself, and builds systems on lies. So why do they appear together in Revelation? Why are they all released at the opening of the seals? Because the seal system represents the unveiling of God's judgment. Each seal is not a random event. It's a revelation, a revealing of what has always been true but hidden. The seals don't create the horsemen. They release them. They expose what was already present, already working, already moving beneath the surface of history. And here's the terrifying reality. We've seen these horses before. Babylon saw them. Rome saw them. Every empire that rose in pride and fell in ruin saw them. But Revelation tells us there's a final ride, a culminating moment when the pattern reaches its ultimate expression, when the deception is global, when the conflict is total, when the collapse is complete, when death claims a fourth of the earth. This connects directly to the ancient war between Michael and the dragon we explored earlier this season. Because the dragon is the one orchestrating the ride, the horsemen are his instruments, and the seals are God's response not to cause suffering, but to reveal the consequences of rebellion. Which horseman do you think we're seeing most clearly today? Let me know in the comments. So, what do we do with this knowledge? How do we live in a world where the horsemen may already be riding? First, we recognize the pattern. We don't panic. We don't despair. But we don't ignore the signs either. When we see false peace celebrated, we remain vigilant. When we see division spreading, we choose unity. When we see systems of inequality, we refuse to participate in oppression. When we see death spreading, we cling to the author of life. Second, we remember that the seals are opened by the Lamb. Jesus holds the scroll. Jesus breaks the seals. The horsemen don't ride without his permission, and that means even in judgment, God is sovereign. Even in chaos, God is in control. And third, we endure. Because Revelation doesn't end with the four horsemen. It ends with the return of the true rider on the white horse, the one whose name is faithful and true, whose eyes are like flames of fire, whose robe is dipped in blood, and whose name is the Word of God. The counterfeit rides first, but the king rides last. And when he does, every horse, every rider, every power that opposed him will bow. In the next video, we'll uncover the fallen angels who are still locked away until the end, and why their release is tied to Revelation's timeline. If this revealed something new to you, subscribe and stay with the channel. Revelation is not chaos. It's a message. You'll also want to watch our videos on the 144,000 and the forbidden vision John was told not to reveal. They all connect, and the deeper you go, the clearer the picture becomes. Some mysteries are revealed slowly, and we're just beginning.